Hi friends, Bill Glenn here. I'm the Assistant Director at the Fushion Learning Center in Andover. I'm thrilled to be joined again today by Dr. David Helfand, who is a relaxation and relationship psychologist in Andover, Mass. Dr. H, it's great to see you.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be back again. It's always fun having these conversations with you. We're gonna have to sort of keep it a little tighter, I think, because we tend to go off track on all these, topics when we talk.
Well, hey, it's all good. I know that there's usually some good content here, so I definitely wanted to get your thoughts a little bit. I know, we're starting to look at going back to school, and families have been really going through the works these days, trying to figure out what's best for their kids without going too crazy. So I definitely wanted to ask a little bit about what do you think, would be some good tips and tricks for folks who are looking to kind of reduce their stress levels. I know you have a lot to say on that topic typically, so I'll just kind of leave it to you here.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And it's a great question. And I know this topic came from me speaking with your director, Michelle, about just what families are going through right now and some tips and tricks that they can use to work on relaxation, work on managing the family system. And there is a lot. I mean, we could easily talk for, I would say, 3 hours or 3 weeks, maybe.
Sure.
So I'll try to be succinct so people can get some really good takeaways from our conversation. But basically, there were 3 categories that came to mind when I was thinking of how families could work with each other or could work on stress right now. The first one is just self-care. And self-care means so many different things depending on which professional you ask. I mean, if you ask a physical therapist, it'll be about, maintaining physical health, right? You ask a nutritionist, it's about the food you eat. And I think all of it's valid, right? Self-care for whatever you need can be a variety of different things. There's a couple categories or subcategories that specifically came to mind for me. One of them people might not think about is just time alone. Sometimes just unplugging and taking some time for yourself is exactly what you need. I was speaking with this woman a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about how stressed out she is, and that I think she was talking about getting more gray hairs, and her husband came on and was like, oh my God, I feel the same way. And I said, well, listen, you guys are working a 100-hour work week. Like, you weren't planning on being the educator, the babysitter, the nanny, the parent, and then they're trying to they're trying to have their own time for each other. So when you think about it, it's like, yeah, you've been putting in a lot of hours that we weren't planning for, as parents and families. So just taking some time for yourself to recharge, ideally doing that in a way that decreases stimulation. So I find myself sitting on my back deck and staring at the trees, and we have these, flowers in the back, and you can watch all the bees, and it's just some time in nature is really fantastic right now. Also, looking at hobbies. So when you're taking some time for self-care, think about all those things that you always say, oh, I'm going to learn guitar next year, It's a great time to pick it up, and as you know from your background image here, right?
Right.
5 to 10 minutes a day can eventually make you pretty good with a guitar. And what I tell people is that doing something is infinitely more than doing nothing. Yeah. So just spend a couple minutes on your hobbies then. And then, of course, being trained in meditation and yoga, I think those practices are fantastic. But again, whatever self-care means to you, maybe it's journaling or artwork or whatever that might be. And then, of course, as the parent, encouraging the kids to do the same. This is a great time for children to develop hobbies, to sort of spend time alone with themselves and learn that skill. A lot of adults aren't really that comfortable spending time alone. So earlier on, we can work with kids on that principle, really the better off they'll be in the long run.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like working from home these past, I guess we're going on 6 months now or something like that. Like, I got a couple of hours back in my day that I'm not commuting. And I think by taking up some new hobbies, I think I mentioned this too. I bought a mandolin a couple of weeks ago, and I've been trying to kind of learn that. Like, the strings are backwards. So it's a little bit like learning to walk again, but it's a lot of fun. It is mentally stimulating, but at the same time, I feel like that's just a zone out kind of thing for me. And like you said, it's so important to remember to take care of yourself, because if I'm putting in an extra 2 hours of work every day, well then, yeah, I want to balance that with something that's going to be, not on a screen, and that doesn't require like a full brain necessarily, because it's exhausting. I get that.
Absolutely. And kids and adults are really not designed to be staring at screens all day. And so, sometimes I tell people, if you can take a Zoom call with audio only and then put on headphones and go for a walk or walk around an office or something, I mean, just even getting up and moving around, and as I'm sure you found, sometimes I find that I've been sitting for like 3 hours and I go, why is my back hurting? And
Right.
it's kind of obvious if you think about it.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I think like anytime I get a phone call or not a Zoom call, I'm like, oh, this is an opportunity. Like you said, it's a Zoom call with no video basically. So yeah, I'm definitely like standing up, walking and talking. That to me almost functions as a break from screen time.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
another recommendation that I would have for families is there's really good research that families where the parents are coupled centered
Okay.
actually have better mental health through the whole family system. So what I mean by coupled centered is they basically put each other first. They focus on the marriage and the relationship at the top. And there's lots of metaphors you can use. You can think of, sports teams where the coach and the owner are really on the same page, right? You can think of other sorts of dyads or triads or groups where you need like leadership, right? And the leaders on the right page, on the same page. It's generally helpful. So couple centered can mean a lot of different things, just like self-care, but a couple quick things that come to mind are date nights and quality time. So I think a lot of couples right now are finding it difficult to get childcare, difficult to spend time together. When you put the kids to bed, you can spend an hour together just talking. Sometimes Netflix or watching shows can be quality time, but I recommend actually connecting with each other in a different way, at least a couple nights a week. I understand sometimes you just want to watch a cooking show and veg out, and that's fine. But actually connecting with each other in a meaningful way is really important. And then the other thing is working on communication skills. When I work with families, and particularly with couples, the first thing we do is work on communication. Because whatever the issues are, it usually comes from poor communication or issues with boundary setting, which is a specific way of communicating. And if the parents are communicating effectively, it almost always trickles down to the kids as well. Because as I'm sure all of your parents know, kids are sponges and they're going to do as you do, not as you say.
100% right. And I think at Fusion, we have a lot of like mantras and things that we try to remember. A lot of it's based in literature. One of the first things that comes to mind that I hear a lot of times on campus is seek first to understand, right? But another one is from our founder, who always used to say, communication fixes everything. And I think to take that a step further, the right kind of communication fixes everything too. So it's so important. And going back to what you said about couple centrism, I guess would be a way of defining it too, is like, yeah, I mean, I think couples should be two-person teams, right? So like a strong team is going to be more successful in whatever they do than a team that isn't functioning properly and maybe isn't communicating properly. So I get that, whether it's a family unit or, we have a team of administrators and staff here, and obviously we want to make sure that our communication is clear, that expectations are set, and that goals are being met, because they're changing, but we still want to make sure that we're meeting them for ourselves, for our students. And yeah, the communication and teamwork is so important. And really, to me, that like falls into a bigger bond of just like community. That while we need to be socially distanced and aware of so many extra things and create so many new routines in our day, like for me, it's so important to remember that we are in this together, and that community building is so important. Like you said, alone time, super important, because you need that kind of space away, I think, from the hustle bustle. I love what you said about like looking out into the backyard and just like staring off into the wilderness. I spend a lot of time doing that too, just like peaceful and perfect and quiet. And
I forget who coined the phrase recently, but this idea that social distancing should not be considered social isolation. There's a very big difference between those two. And I wish I could remember the interview I saw. I'm stealing that from. I'm sure maybe someone can put it in the comments below the video online. But basically, that having community is you're right on. That, you know, the parents are sort of the first step in community within the family system. The family system is a community in and of itself. But then looking at broader community and supports is actually the third topic on my list. And, you know, the couple and family, as I said, is the first part of that. But there's a lot of other pieces to community and support. You know, there's educational support, as what Fushion offers. There's professional support, like my colleagues and myself in the field. There's emotional support you get from friends and extended family. You know, just calling someone up and saying, oh my God, I've had this, like, you know, my kids it's taken 2 hours to put them to bed. I'm so burnt out right now. And on the other line, for someone to go, I know exactly what you're talking about. Just that validation sometimes can sort of put you at ease. Now, I recommend that couples be the first support for each other, but sometimes both people are burnt out and you need to go outside, right? You need to have additional supports. And especially if one parent is not a teacher, the educational supports become really important in that regard. And there's one other piece that I want to mention, which is electronics. I know a lot of people right now, and I'm certainly guilty of this as well. It's so easy to put your kids in front of a television or give them an iPad and, you know, all these kinds of things. You know, there's evidence, and according to the Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Pediatrics, they suggest that any kid under 2 really shouldn't be using screens for the most part. I think there's some debate amongst professionals whether or not 2 is the right cutoff, but certainly being mindful of how much time your kids spend on technology is really important. And the literature that I find even more interesting is that when the parents engage with the kids during electronic use, it's actually helpful for building the connection. And if there's something that comes up on the screen, the parents can sort of correct the image or the belief that might come from that.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I think screens are great. You know, we've been using those a lot these days, obviously, and as a teaching tool, like, yes, video is tremendous, but I think one thing that's become really clear to me too is that, you know, sometimes I think with video lessons, sometimes the pacing gets a little bit lost, but there really is no substitute for someone sitting there with you, kind of helping you navigate it if you're a student. And from the teacher's perspective too, like, we want to be, you know, as a teacher, checking for understanding as we go through. And you know, at Fushion, one of the things I like to think about is that students and teachers are partners in learning. And you know, because we're one-to-one, it really is a partnership between student and teacher. And yeah, like, you can use a screen, but like for a parent or a teacher to be there to help kids, you know, process new information or, you know, be reviewing information, but in a new way, that's so helpful.
Absolutely. And, you know, I like to think of screens as a tool, right? And like any tool, you're not going to give someone new to carpentry skills on and let them go crazy, right?
Right.
You can teach them how to use screens appropriately. And, you know, it's very easy to suck all of your time and energy into the screen if you let them. But, you know, for the most part, kids at some point want to interact with people in other ways. And so if you're just there and present and available, you know, they'll do that. There might be a little bit of a backlash when you turn the TV off, but that's to be expected. And, you know, with the right communication, you can kind of move through that very positively.
Sure. There's a good reason for it. Absolutely. You know, we both, you know, find a lot of joy in doing things that aren't on screens. And like you said, it's a tool, and it for sure needs a little bit of coaching. You wouldn't just give somebody a tool and say, here, you know nothing about this, but go for it and see what happens. Safe with some things, maybe not with others. But yeah, I think, you know, just in education broadly, this is such an interesting and changing time. And we want to be there to support. And yeah, maybe the future of education looks like a little bit more time on screens, but I don't think that human element is ever going to go away. It's such an important part. Like, people need mentors and coaches and support systems, and I think the learning process for kids and adults is exactly like that. You know, it should be a partnership, and while the tools may change, the depending on, what's going on in the world or what technology is available, that connection is one of the most important parts of it. You don't learn from someone who you're not connected with.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had textbooks for, I don't know how many hundreds of years exactly. You might actually know that answer better than I do. But we still have had teachers alongside that. So this is just an evolution of the tools, and hopefully the education and the rest of the community evolves along with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're always evolving. The teaching field, I guess, I've been doing this for a decade, and it's so different now than it was 10 years ago in some ways, and in some ways it's exactly the same. But it's always changing. But like you said, the textbook has been there for a long time, but that person-to-person connection has been there even longer, and I think that's something that will stay the same no matter what else kind of happens.
Very true. So just to summarize for people that are watching the video, the three categories here: self-care, being coupled-centered, and then using your supports in community. I really emphasize that if you can focus on those three things as you're heading into this new academic school year, or if you're watching this video a little bit past August and September, just using that as a reintegration and reconsideration for where your stress is and how maybe you can work to improve it somewhat. I'm also here to support people. I do a lot of relaxation and relationship coaching and psychology work in my practice. So you can reach me at lifewisema.com. I'm happy to help people in whatever way they need. I take an individualized approach, as I know Fushion does as well. And I'm here to help folks any way that I can.
David, it's so great, and I hope that folks will reach out to you if they need your support, because you're just such a wealth of knowledge about all things relaxation and family, and it's so great to talk to you. And if folks are interested in learning more about what we're doing down at the Fushion Learning Center in Andover, we will be open for in-person and virtual subject-specific tutoring, mentoring, and academic enrichment. We kind of do it all, which is really exciting for us. And so please feel free to visit our website at learn.fusionacademy.com if you'd like more information, or give us a call. We're on campus. It's 978-494-8580. We'd love to give you a tour of our space. We'd love it here. And if your kids need a little bit of help or just want a cool place to hang out and get a little bit of work done during the day, we are going to be offering part day and full day programs in the fall, as well as any number of customizable virtual academic options.
Sounds great, Bill. And thank you again for the opportunity. It's always good to talk with you, and I love being part of the Fushion community.
Likewise, Dr. H, it's so great to see you again. And everybody out there that's listening, we hope you stay safe and healthy out there, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Likewise.